I am Mr. Obsidian. Prepare yourself for the Man of Black.
Story happened to a young man in the Pacific Northwest about 20 years ago.
No way. Not this time. It happened. A similar event took place. It's totally made up. Pure fiction.
A similar story happened to a teacher in the Florida area. It happened.
No, not this time. It's fact. It happened. This one took place. It's fiction. It's fiction. It's a made-up tale. It's a total fabrication. It never happened. It happened. It never happened. It happened. It's fact. It's fiction. It's an urban legend that never happened.
A similar story occurred in the state of New Jersey about 20 years ago.
No way. Not a chance. Not this time. It never.
Dead, they asked.
Welcome back to my dark corner of this sick world.
It's top secret. Very few people outside of myself know of it.
The Madmen of Mandaras was originally released in 1963.
However, there's been a complication.
5 years later, the producers wanted to get it on TV, but it wasn't long enough. So they invented two new characters.
You know you're really disgusting.
Coming from you, that's a compliment.
Shot 20 minutes of new footage, culminating in those characters' deaths. Tacked it onto the front of the existing movie.
Doesn't make sense.
And renamed it They Saved Hitler's Brain. But it's still essentially the Madmen of Mandaras, which didn't make much sense to start with.
G-gas kills humans in the same manner as DDT kills flies.
That isn't a human or a fly, it's an elephant lying down.
Yes, we know that.
The plot kickstarts with a phone call to a weapons professor who isn't exactly Liam Neeson.
We have your daughter Suzanne. Do not contact the police. Go to her apartment.
Frank. Nothing.
I don't know who you are or what you want, because I hung up the phone already.
You sure we're doing the right thing?
She's been kidnapped as bait, although since her father is kidnapped 2 minutes later,
Hold it. In the car. Come on, move.
you've got to wonder why.
I see what you mean.
He is then used as bait to lure his other daughter and her husband,
They have taken him to my country, Mandoras.
although since it's the professor they want, again, you've got to wonder why.
What do you mean again?
And the first daughter?
They gave me some money, fixed me up in a hotel, and said I could run and play as long as I called nobody back home.
What considerate kidnappers.
Now what?
Now they're all kidnapped.
But I'm wondering why you've had us brought here.
Yeah, you and me both.
He has been stubborn. But now that you are all here, we will try another approach.
That would make so much sense if you hadn't already kidnapped one daughter and just set her free.
This is like some kind of a bad joke.
No, this is like a bad joke.
You will see your great victory, my Führer.
I'm guessing that translates as, why are you speaking to me in English?
Something has gone wrong.
Hitler in a jar remains this movie's USP. Some men give up when they lose a war.
But not Mr. H.
Mr. H?
Hitler alive. It's incredible.
The thing is, Mr. H doesn't really feature. I like the idea of a pocket of Nazis remaining faithful to a head in a jar that's become no more than a symbol, as he clearly has no idea what's going on.
There's been a change in plans, mein Führer. We will go to the town and release the gas ourselves.
But the plot isn't about him, it's about nerve gas.
Within a matter of hours, we will begin the conquest of the world.
So our heroes, last seen kidnapped for the umpteenth time, have to save the world. But how will they escape the Nazis? These are Hitler's personal guard, who then just let their prisoners walk away as the alarm's going off. And they're not the only useless ones. Turns out the whole island's against the Nazis, but have been waiting for the one American man to show up and save them.
Please, Senor Day, take it. You may need it.
With his wife, who can't recognise a gunshot.
Phil, pull over to the side. Something's wrong.
What's wrong?
I don't know.
But I'm sure it has nothing to do with that loud bang and the pool of blood spreading across his chest.
A wife like this, who needs a girlfriend?
Events climax in an exciting shootout in the alleys of Mandaras.
Got a flashlight, Casey, so keep low.
Here in this pool of light.
Phil?
Why are you running at him? You're the one with the loaded gun!
The senor must be joking, of course.
What does it say about a movie when I find myself rooting for the Nazi? Oh, looks like someone's opened the Ark of the Covenant. Is this the most bonkers post-World War II Nazi resurgence plot ever? Or are there worse? Let us know in the comments below. Check out our other reviews, don't forget to subscribe, and thanks for watching.
He was the ruthless leader of the October Revolution and the founder and first leader of the Soviet Union. But Vladimir Lenin, on the 21st of January 1924, at around 6:50 in the evening, died. He had been ill for many years and he had suffered from a number of strokes. There was a belief that an assassination plot, he survived at the hands of a female assassin named Fanny Kaplan, may have caught up with him eventually, as bullets were never removed from his body, as he was so fearful that a doctor would finish him off. Lenin is remembered in history as one of the most controversial figures, and some people regard him as a hero if they were supporters of his political beliefs, but others consider that his rise resulted in the slaughter of the Tsar, Tsarina, and the Romanov royal family, including the children, and that he would later usher in the rise of Stalin, whose rules would be synonymous with purges in which millions were slaughtered. But one of the strangest and most macabre spectacles which can still be seen today is the body of Lenin, which remains a whole century after his death on public display inside of his mausoleum. But how are his remains preserved so remarkably? Today we will look at this, and to support our channel, please make sure to subscribe. In March of 1923, Vladimir Lenin had a third stroke, and he then lost the ability to talk and speak. He also experienced partial paralysis on his right side, and despite over the next few months making a slow recovery, he made his final visit to the Kremlin in the October of 1923. It was clear to everyone that this was not the Vladimir Lenin who had once galvanized a revolution that led to the overthrow of the last Russian ruling family, but he was clearly very ill. On the 21st of January 1924, Lenin fell into a coma and he died that day at the age of 53. Officially, his cause of death was that he died from incurable disease of the blood vessels, but others have put other causes down as the reason that Lenin died, including his numerous strokes. The Soviet authorities announced the death of Lenin the following day, on the 23rd of January. 2 days after his death, many mourners from the Communist Party and officials visited his home in Gorka to view his body. This was then placed inside of a red coffin by powerful Bolsheviks, and it was transported then by train to Moscow. The coffin of Lenin was then placed inside the House of Trade Unions, where it then lay in state on display for people to see. Over 1 million people over the course of 3 days came to see the remains of Lenin. There was at the time a lot of jostling for power by leading communists, and a battle for power emerged between Leon Trotsky and Stalin even got one up over Trotsky, telling him the wrong date of Lenin's funeral. But in the days following his death, the wooden tomb in Red Square close to the Moscow Kremlin wall, where Lenin's body was displayed, was replaced by a more elaborate mausoleum and sarcophagus. The body of Lenin was embalmed by pathologist Alexei Ivanokov-Abroskov, and to begin with, this was done so that it remained in a good manner, whilst many people filed past before the funeral. The decision was then made to not bury Lenin, but instead to keep the body on public display and to ensure that it could be viewed for centuries later by anyone who wanted to see it. 2 other men, Boris Zabrowski and Vladimir Volobriev, were later drafted in to help preserve the remains, and they worked on the body in the same manner that the pharaohs were worked upon. A huge mausoleum was then established, known as Lenin's Mausoleum, where the body has been on almost continuous display inside of it since it was completed in 1930. In October of 1941, the body was evacuated to Serbia to protect it as the advancing German army during World War II posed a threat. And following the war, the body was then returned to the mausoleum and the tomb was reopened. Following the death of Joseph Stalin, Stalin's body was embalmed and placed on public display next to Lenin's too, but this would then be interred in a tomb at the Kremlin Wall necropolis. But there were a number of problems with keeping Lenin's body in a good manner. Firstly, there were a number of dark spots which had formed upon Lenin's body following his death. These were on his face and also his hands, and they wanted to show Lenin as almost untouched as if he had fallen asleep. This was solved by using different chemicals to make the skin appear whiter. Also, whilst working on Lenin's remains, Boris Zabrowski invented a new way to purify chloroform for the preservation process. He found that if the skin wrinkled or discoloured, that using a solution of acetic acid and ethyl alcohol diluted with water treated this, and then hydrogen peroxide could be used to bring back the original colour of the tissue. Damp spots on his remains were also disinfected using phenyl or quinine. Every year, the remains of Lenin are soaked in a solution of glycerol and potassium acerate. To keep the body looking fresh and clean, it is removed briefly off display whilst this takes place, but there are parts of him which are fake. Synthetic eyeballs were placed inside of his orbital cavities to ensure that his eye sockets did not collapse. As mentioned, his remains are still on display today, and the folk who are responsible for this today are known as the Centre for Scientific Research and Teaching Methods in Biochemical Technologies. There are around 6 autonomists and biochemists and surgeons known as the Mausoleum Group who constantly maintain the remains. They also help preserve the bodies of Vietnamese leader Ho Chi Minh and the remains of Kim Il-sung and Kim Jong-il, the North Korean dictators. The scientists keep a close eye on the shape, weight, colour and suppleness of Lenin's corpse, and they have developed their own embalming methods around it. When Lenin's body was originally embalmed, the cold Soviet winter helped to protect and preserve the body, but the major arteries of Lenin had been slashed and cut, and the blood vessels cut and the body relieved of blood. This meant that using embalming fluids through the circulatory system was not possible, so today, micro-injections using single needles deliver the embalming fluids to part of the former leader's remains, and there are cuts and scars of the body from where things had been done to it in the past. Through this, a double-layered rubber suit has been created to keep a thin layer of embalming fluid covering Lenin's remains at all times during public display, and a regular suit of clothes that he is shown wearing fits over this rubber suit. The body does become re-embalmed every few years, and it takes roughly 6 weeks to complete this. Every day there are inspections carried out to ensure that nothing is going wrong and that no decay is setting in amongst the body of Lenin. His body needs to be kept from drying out so it doesn't mummify either. Over time there has been specific work done on different body parts. The scientists have had to deal with old and wrinkles that appear on his body, and eventually artificial skin patches were sewn onto his body when pieces of skin on his feet went missing during the war years. Also, Lenin's nose, face and other parts have been re-sculpted to restore them to the original look, as over time things have begun to fade and sink slightly. It was a few years back revealed that the true cost of preserving his embalmed remains are roughly $200,000 a year, and some inside of the land question whether Lenin's remains should be laid to rest once and for all. It is considered that of all of Lenin's internal organs have been removed too, meaning that the man who is laid to rest today inside of his mausoleum and who is still on public display a century after his death is just a shell. His skin, which is shown, has had so much work on it, fitted with an artificial patches or pumped full of so many chemicals, that it is rather a macabre spectacle. It lies on the open sarcophagus behind a glass case, which is temperature controlled, his head lying on a red cushion. Lenin is propped up and is viewed by roughly 450,000 people a year who file past the remains. What is interesting though is that the decision to preserve and enshrine his corpse was opposed by his family and loved ones, and even his wife did not want this to happen. Lenin wanted a simple burial or cremation, but 100 years after his death, his remains are still pumped full of fluids to keep him in a relatively good state. It's believed he is kept in this way as a sign of the Soviet Union's formation and of communism, but since the collapse of the Union, he has not been laid to rest once and for all, and leaders tend to avoid the question of placing him in a grave. Thank you for watching, and to support our channel, please make sure to subscribe, and again, thank you so much for watching.
I'm about to give you one hell of a ride. First of all, I will give you all new eyes. We will certainly prove that all the experts know is wrong, and show that transplanting a head onto a new body is feasible in man. No less. Many years ago, a young doctor lost one of his best friends to cancer. But this was no ordinary doctor. He was a brilliant American neurosurgeon who believed that perhaps had he been able to transplant the healthy head of his friend, unscathed by the cancer, on a healthy donor body, he would have saved his life. In 1970, Dr. White carried out the first head-body transplantation of monkeys. But the problem was that at the time, it did not have the technology to rejoin a severed spinal cord, and so left the animal paralyzed. Over the past 35 years, researchers from all around the world set out to find a cure for spinal paralysis. Despite high hopes and many promising leads, they all failed. Thus, in the experts' opinion, reconstructing the spinal cord is impossible, and so is head transplantation. But something has happened. There's a new kid in town, Gemini. I give you the spinal cord fusion protocol, and your lives won't be again the same. According to traditional neurological lore, movements are generated in the brain, where both the orchestra, the motor orchestra, and her director lie. From here, impulses are conveyed to the spinal cord through a specialized motor highway, a bundle of 1 million fibers, all of them necessary for movements to occur. Just like spaghetti. And for movements to occur, you really need all of them. In the spinal cord, the spaghetti come in contact with specialized cells called motor neurons. These are the cells that make you move. If this were the true story, I wouldn't be here. But the story is plenty different. I welcome you to heaven, the head anastomosis venture. And the world will never be the same again. Spinal cord injury has nothing to do with severing a spinal cord, the way we will do when we'll detach the head from the body. Spinal cord injury releases 26,000 newtons of force. This is spinal cord injury. It's unrecoverable. This is what happens in Gemini. The very sharp blade that will be used will release less than 10 newtons of force. That banana can be brought back to life, but this can. The second eye-opener is that the spinal cord is no slave. The whole motor orchestra, the whole array of motor programs that make you move is found in the spinal cord. The brain is merely a director, and we all know that an orchestra can still play without a director, albeit perhaps less perfectly, depending on the director. How do we know? Well, if we stimulate electrically with the spinal cord stimulator, the spinal cord below the level of injury, we can make paraplegic patients stand up, move their legs, and take steps. This is huge. Electricity, just like in the Frankenstein novel. We just need 10-20%. How do we know? Easy. Back in the 50s, neurosurgeons, in their quest to find a cure for Parkinson's disease, severed this bundle of spaghetti, motor highway 1, and after an initial paralysis, patients recovered their movements in full, with just 10-20% of all this spaghetti, of all these fibers, spared. The fourth eye-opener is that discovered in the first half of the 20th century and then long ignored by the experts lies a second motor highway, a pillar spanning the whole length of the spinal cord, a meshwork of closely packed cells joined by short-range fibers. And when you sever the spinal cord, you sever the short-range fibers. But neurons, as they are called, are known to regenerate their extensions. And in motor highway 2, the regeneration is over a very short distance. So it takes a short time for motor highway 2 to be re-established, back in business. But we still have the spinal cord stimulator. And spinal cord stimulation, electrical stimulation, has the power to accelerate the regrowth process of these short-range fibers. If we sever the spaghetti, all of them, but spare the core of the spinal cord, we can get tetraplegic patients to recover the movements over months and in full after about 1 year, because motor highway 2 takes over the full brunt of supporting the motor traffic between the brain, the director, and the motor neurons. At this point, we need a magic ingredient, a special class of substances called fusogens sealants. And the best known example of a fusogen sealant is polyethylene glycol, PEG. PEG is everywhere. You have it on you, especially the females. This morning, I was at the beach, getting me sunshine, and PEG is found in sun lotions, right there. Found in skin creams, women apply before going to sleep. It's found in your printers as a lubricant for the print heads, and believe me, it is an excellent lubricant for medical purposes. And PEG has the uncanny ability to reconstitute damaged biomembranes. And it has been under our and the experts' noses for decades now. The first application dates back to 1986. Fiber, severance, joined together the stumps with PEG, reconstituted. The first application on the spinal cord dates back to 1999. Right now, PEG can rejoin severed peripheral nerves in men without the need for perfect alignment of the fibers. 2 months ago, a German group made the point much more clearly. They removed the scar from spinally injured rats. And the rats went from paralysis to walking again within a few weeks. Heaven, Gemini, is gonna work. Heaven was meant to be the solution for intractable neurological disorders, muscular dystrophies, muscle wasting disorders that leave you immobilized in a bed, but with a clear mind. It was meant for tetraplegia and a host of other disorders for which Western medicine has no solution at all. In this case, you would transplant the healthy head detached from the sick body onto a brain-dead donor. Just like you see for ordinary garden variety organ transplantation. Instead of donating the heart, the lungs, this donor, who is brain dead, would donate the entire body. But something happened along the way that redirected heaven and widened its scope, and in so doing changed your lives forever. Three years ago, a Russian billionaire founded the Avatar Initiative with the goal of cybernetic immortality. By 2025, Avatar aims at transplanting a brain onto a cybernetic body. The problem is that if you transplant an aging brain onto whatever you want, the brain remains aged. But heaven upends this gloomy scenario. In heaven, the brain, the head, would be transplanted on a young donor body. Data accrued since the 1950s prove that if you inject blood from a young animal into old animals, you trigger a rejuvenating cascade of the muscles, the heart, and the brain. Imagine a world where life extension becomes the norm. But the problem is that, happily, there is a dearth of suitable donors. But fancy this. If in this century, cloning, currently a highly inefficient procedure and slow, gets perfected and accelerated, you will all get a new young you, and this new young body, whose head will be removed, and your old head will be reattached because your memories, your personality is in the old one, then you will get a boost another 40 years. Not bad for something that just cost 10 million euros. There are also rebates for billionaires. But heaven is much more. As you all know, there are many patients who are reanimated after a heart arrest, brought back to life. And several of these report what is called a near-death experience. They see tunnels of light. They feel like they are in another world, which is more real than this one. Now, according to materialist science, this is the product of a dying brain that is being revived. Now, I belong to a group of scientists who believe otherwise, who believe that the brain is only a filter, does not generate consciousness. Now, during the transference of the head on the new body, the head will be cooled to 10 degrees Celsius and will be bloodless. It will be as dead as it gets, clinically gone. Now, I expect that upon reawakening, the subjects will report a full-blown near-death experience. When this happens, we will have final proof that once you die, once the brain dies, consciousness survives. And again, for 10 million euros. In the end, before we all go truly bananas, including the experts who blasted heaven and now see their funds in jeopardy, we must all remember the words of a great revolutionary, Gandhi. First, they ignore you. Then they laugh at you. Then they fight you. Then you win. Thank you for listening.
I am Mr. Obsidian. Prepare yourself for the Man of Black.